Following a meeting of the F1 Commission on Monday, FIA is changing its rules again for 2024. One of these changes will be regarding the sprint race format in Formula 1, which will be reshuffled for 2024, with Grand Prix qualifying moving to Saturday. Next to that, we are going to see engine and DRS changes. Will this be enough to make the season exciting again? And what changes will the teams make to their cars? We'll fill you in on the latest. The timetable for the 6 sprint race weekends in 2024 will be reordered awaiting permission from the World Motorsport Council, but the FIA provided details of the conversations held by those participating in the F1 Commission. Sprint weekends will be structured as follows: free practice and sprint qualifying on Friday, followed by the sprint race on Saturday. The shortened race format will come before qualifying for the Grand Prix, which will take place on Saturday and Sunday. The Commission has agreed in principle, with the FIA announcing that regulation modifications would be brought to the WMSC on February 28th, a few days before the Bahrain season opening. The adjustments come after last season's concerns over parc fermé circumstances, which saw cars essentially locked into their setups on Fridays after only one practice session. Several drivers were forced to give up their grid places for Sunday's race after discovering an improper setup choice during sprint qualifying and the race itself. The scheduling of the sprint race weekend sessions is planned to guarantee that parc fermé may be reopened between the sprint race and Grand Prix qualifying, allowing for any required setup changes. This will also make the race more unpredictable this year, as last year it was just a copy of the sprint most of the time. Alpine violated parc fermé for Esteban Ocon in last year's Baku sprint race to make suspension improvements, whilst both Aston Martins and Haas's began in the pit lane in Austin to make specification tweaks. This will be possible to implement between the races this year. In 2024, the Chinese, Miami, Austrian, United States, Sao Paulo and Qatar Grand Prix will be held during a sprint weekend, with China and Miami replacing the Azerbaijan and Belgium sprint weekends from the previous season. Further late revisions for 2024 will include reducing the limited power unit allotment from 4 to 3 for internal combustion engines, MGU-K, MGU-H and turbochargers. This has been restored to 4 per driver for 2024 and 2025. Further, the FIA stated that the group discussed a number of topics relating to the 2026 regulations, in particular financial and sustainability matters, along with the fact that other minor updates to the 2024 technical, sporting and financial regulations were approved by the Commission. Aside from that, in an effort to encourage more overtaking, the F1 Commission declared that DRS, drag reduction system, overtaking will be triggered after 1 lap of a start or restart rather than 2 laps as previously. Those are the changes made by the FIA, but we can also expect major changes coming to the cars as well. And with Formula 1's 2024 launch season already underway, we can start to see some changes coming in. Let's look at some of the critical areas we'll see development in this start of the season. An F1 car's major downforce generator is its strong ground effect Venturi tunnels located in the underfloor. One of the main reasons Red Bull is so powerful is that it features an extremely effective underfloor that can generate massive quantities of downforce while avoiding bouncing issues. Whenever we received a peek of the Red Bull's underfloor detail last year, most notably when Sergio Perez crashed in qualifying in Monaco and the RB19 was taken off the track, the degree of detail in what you could term the underfloor topography was impressive. Rather than having the Venturi tunnels at the lowest possible height, which may provide the maximum downforce, the floor's top surface varies. This higher floor ceiling, together with the suspension characteristics, guaranteed that the downforce created was constant and unaffected by the possibility of initiating porpoising. This won't be clear until we see some stealthy spy images, but teams will have worked hard to learn how to achieve equivalent mastery of underfloor design. While we can't see the flooring until a car is being recovered after a crash, the Sidepods are a good way to identify the 2024 cars. The way the Sidepods interface with the floor edges and underfloor is critical in this generation of cars. It is expected that those who have not yet adopted the Red Bull-style downwash Sidepod design will do so. Some did this simply by using a slope form, such as Red Bull. However, some, such as Alpine, had a more distinct channel. Ferrari, in particular, will be an interesting case study because it began to transition away from its scalloped sidepod shape last year and plans to make a larger shift in 2024. However, there is another more essential sidepod design trend in which we may see some variety. This is how the sidepods are packed to optimize airflow around the side. To do this, Red Bull has pioneered the concept of increasing the sidepod inlet to increase undercut. This is critical because the airflow around the sidepods and how it interacts with the floor margins is critical not just for downforce production, but also for car consistency. The sidepods used in McLaren's Austrian Grand Prix upgrade package last year demonstrate this. The progression is also evident in the 2 upgrades Red Bull made to their sidepods in 2023, each of which expanded the cooling intake wider and shallower. Last year, Red Bull's chassis was more V-shaped than the others. This is evident in the alteration in the design of the chassis' front end, which was already fairly rounded in 2022 but will be more V-shaped in 2023. This is important because it increases volume in a critical location of the underfloor while also coordinating with the way airflow is controlled off the front tyre and front wings. There's every chance that others will follow in this direction. And maybe one of the major changes for some of the cars this year will be seen in the cockpit. While the driver's position in the car may appear to be the same at first glance, the distance back they sat varied last year due to the positioning of the cockpit opening. Lewis Hamilton's criticisms about cockpit placement earlier in the season made headlines. He thought he was seated too far forward, which contributed to his lack of faith in the Mercedes rear-end performance. We're only talking about being 20 to 25 centimeters more forward than Max Verstappen was in the Red Bull, but it can make a difference. We should expect some variance here, but Mercedes is the team to watch closely. That does not necessarily imply that Mercedes will make a change. According to technical director James Allison, the first-order difficulty was the car's inherent rear instability, which caused him to describe it as truculent. However, because the cockpit position was largely determined by how the car was intended to accommodate the zero sidepod concept, which has since been scrapped, modifying it may be an option. And one of the more technical but important changes could be made to the suspension. And when the new cars come rolling out, one of the most noticeable aspects of design is whether it has pushrod or pull rod suspension. A pushrod is positioned high inboard and low to the wheel upright outboard. As the name implies, adjusting the wheel height causes the suspension rocker to activate. A pull rod is the inverse, placed low inboard and connected high on the upright of the wheel. This pulls the rocker. When the new regulations went into effect in 2022, only Red Bull and McLaren chose a pull rod front suspension with a pushrod rear. This reversed the seasonal convention prior to the regulation modification. They remained the only teams to have such combination in 2023. That's partly because they're the only ones with pull rod front suspension, while the competition was split 50-50 in terms of rear layout. The question at hand is if other teams will replicate Red Bull and McLaren's combo. We already anticipate Red Bull's second team to follow that route, given it uses Red Bull's suspension throughout, having just adopted its rear suspension in 2023. But how about the rest? The pushrod and pull rod accomplish the same task in different ways. Therefore, this selection isn't primarily influenced by mechanical suspension operation. Due to that, the F1 regulations are more restrictive. It's easy to expect car designs to become even more similar this year. However, this does not rule out the possibility of someone surprising you. We're not sure what it may be, but we'll keep a lookout for any design surprises. When questioned about design trends, Mercedes technical director James Allison stated that most people will be iterating down a similar avenue, and it is most certainly the path that Red Bull has chosen. However, Allison also stressed, it doesn't mean that there isn't room for innovation at all. That's likely to be in the little details and may require some work to detect. But there's always the possibility of a fresh concept appearing on the new cars, even if it's disguised in the launch versions. New innovations will serve as a reminder that this method is more than just seeking to replicate Red Bull's stunning success, especially because it may also surprise, despite producing what is characterized as an evolutionary car. Are you expecting to see major changes to the cars this year? And what are your thoughts on the rule changes? Do you like the new revised sprint format? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.